Hi, welcome back. So in this video, I just want to explain why the Care 7 YouTube page is applicable to everybody. It's not just here for helping the clients that we serve who've gone through a traumatic event, but it's here for ourselves, those of us that are helping professionals, or those of us that just need a little bit extra support or skills and tools for managing stress, which is pretty inevitable in life. Not everybody is going to experience a traumatic event. However, we all do experience stress. Stress affects everybody, though in different intensities and varying degrees. It is a common denominator in our shared experiences. Our jobs can be very stressful. We are managing crisis. We are exposed to other people's trauma, in addition to trying to manage effective and respectful working relationships with our colleagues, dealing with case notes, protocols, grant funding, all sorts of things that create stress at the workplace. Our family lives, dealing with health, finance, relationships, interpersonal issues, caretaking or parenting, not to mention the community shared stress that we have through things like COVID and racial tensions and political divide. In addition to our stress at work and our stress at home, there's always the potential that deep down inside there's some untreated and unresolved stress that could be needing attention. So there's healthy stress that promotes growth, adaptation, resiliency. There's manageable stress that is, allows us to be pretty sustainable and maintain health. And then there's chronic or toxic stress. And that's what I really want to speak to today, because it leans into a trauma-informed approach and a trauma-informed lens. When an individual goes through a traumatic event, it creates a physiological and a psychological response that we refer to as a trauma response. So trauma is not indicated by the event or intensity of the event, but rather the way in which an individual responds to a highly stressful or threatening event. Also, be sure to check out the other videos that go into much more detail regarding the trauma response. Similarly, when an individual experiences consistent and repetitively high levels of stress, they respond in a very similar way as the trauma response. They respond psychologically, they respond physiologically, and we call that a toxic stress response. So if we constantly have a lot of stress, or we have a lot to do, or we have a lot of anticipatory anxiety, meaning there's always something more coming and we're trying to prepare for it and prepare for it and prepare for it. Although it's not necessarily a life-threatening stress, it is a stress, and the brain and the body are going to constantly prepare itself for more stress, more stress, more stress, in the same way that a traumatized person is going to be on alert, on alert, on alert for threat. So again, the brain and the body don't differentiate between types of stress. The brain and the body are gathering information, and they're determining what part of the system has to be activated the most to get through whatever the kind of stressful event it is. Stress response puts us, our body and our mind, kind of like operating in fifth gear all the time. When we live in fifth gear all the time, it's really damaging to the vehicle of self, and it's not sustainable. We can't drive in fifth gear all the time. There is a natural procedure that requires us to downshift, and that same natural procedure is required in our brain and in our body. And when we don't learn to manage stress, when we don't start to integrate an interruption of this high revving stress response, we become toxic in the same way that creates all sorts of physical and mental health issues that we might see being experienced within those clients that are having trauma response. In the same way that a car is going to eventually wear itself out, if we constantly run in fifth gear, we're going to be exhausted and debilitated. Learning how to downshift and regulate our speed helps to prevent the toxic buildup of our stress hormones. I really want to remind you that being stressed or having stress is not a sign of character weakness. It's a natural part of life. And it's okay to talk about it. It's okay to learn about it. It's okay to try new skills for coping and managing it. And to some degree, it's a non-negotiable. Managing stress, particularly toxic stress, is preventative mental health care. It is preventative physical health care. I would also argue that learning to manage stress is trauma-informed care. We can talk all day long about trauma response and trauma-informed care. We can be experts on all the latest neuroscience and brain development research. We can say all the fancy words and do all the new protocols and system management procedures. But until we actually start having a lived experience of trauma-informed care or self-care, we're missing the full potential and the full capacity of helping ourselves and helping our communities. It's one thing to know it in theory, it's another thing to know it in genuine practice. And this has a direct effect on our clients. Two of the most important aspects to a trauma-informed foundation are transparency and trustworthiness. Our clients rely on people that are safe and easy to connect to. When we have an increased degree of relatability or a shared experience, it builds trust, it builds safety, it builds client rapport. And we know that these attributes of building client rapport help that client develop healthier relationships that are more sustainable throughout the long term. We know that having this healthy rapport and connection builds resiliency. Our clients are going to appreciate connecting to us in a way that brings in that common denominator of human experience. Clearly, when we're working with our clients, we don't want to share in a traumatic event. But if we share in our understanding of stress, and if we share in our understanding of how to manage stress, that is going to enhance the relationship. It's going to encourage them to be more likely to use and implement the tools and resources for managing their trauma response when they know that their helping professional, maybe the first person that they're in contact with, is also doing these practices to help themselves. Self-care and stress management is not a sign of weakness. It is not a sign of selfishness. It is a sign of self-respect. It's also a sign of respect to our family and our friends and our community. We all know what it's like to be around people that are high stress and grumpy. My kids will be the first to tell you, they know when I'm not doing a good job in my stress management, when I'm hangry, or when I haven't gone for a bike ride, or when I haven't slept more than 2 hours. It affects our relationships, both personal and working. And our job is to optimize people's lives. It is to keep them safe, to keep them healthy, to give them resources and choices that improve their quality of life. This applies to us just as much as it applies to our clients. Okay, so that's it for today. There will be lots more videos. I'm sure you can't wait. But for now, really remember and kind of chew on this concept that toxic stress has very, very similar attributes and symptoms as a trauma response does. And the more that we try to help our clients understand what is going on in their bodies, the more we can try to do the same thing for our own selves.